Thanks very much, Chris. And it's great to see you all here today to examine in a community forum a topic which is forefront at the moment in the community. And I refer, of course, to the current plans by City Council to remove Victoria's first major modern piece of public art, and that is Jack Wilkinson's Centennial Fountain. And it is indeed that initiative which prompted the notion of, well, maybe we could have a community forum that would just look at the whole phenomenon of public art. And so we've gathered, as Chris mentioned, 4 brilliant panelists. And by the way, I should say, I'm the second run for the moderator. We tried to get Gregor Craigie from CBC, and he sends his regrets and says, have a good time. So I'll do my best, but I cannot pretend to his brilliance and expertise at doing such things. So our 4 panelists tonight are, first of all, Ilarian Gallant, who is a registered landscape architect and a sculptural public artist. And I think he will talk about a few of his pieces, which you will be familiar with as soon as you see them around town and Sandwich Peninsula for that matter. He's a graduate at Emily Carr Institute of Art. He studied abroad at Karlsruhe, West Germany, and Vienna, Austria. And he's been producing public art for 40 years. Very young. Second, Pamela Madoff, who really needs no introduction, but I'll introduce her anyway. Pam served on City Council for 25 years. God, that's like a sentence, isn't it? With the responsibilities for portfolios such as art in public places. So her hand can be seen all across the city of Victoria with our quite rich heritage now of public art. As a councillor, she led the projects to restore Beacon Hill Park, Totem Pole, and the Gate of Harmonious Interest. And I remember having to buy a bag off her to support that. So, and the bag lady for the Gate of Harmonious Interest, which looks like it's up for its second restoration, third construction, right? Thirdly, Robert Randall. Robert is a Victoria-based fine artist and graphic designer. Robert has served as co-chair for the Open Spaces Arts Society and chair of the Downtown Residents Association. He's also served as a juror for the BC Arts Council grant program. And he's currently on Sandwich's Arts, Culture and Community Wellbeing Committee. So we look forward to Robert's perspective on this. And finally, J.C. Scott. J.C. and I have known each other for God knows how long. An internationally experienced hospitality and residential designer. You may not know it. You have at one time or another, I am sure, had a good dinner in one of his restaurant interiors. He specializes in creating successful projects through eco-design. His volunteer work has included co-chair of the Victoria Public Art Committee, and past year of the chair of the Victoria Community Arts Council. So he brings a depth of knowledge and wisdom to the topic. So to open the evening, a few remarks. And of course, the first thing is, well, what is public art? I looked it up on Wikipedia. And it said, any media whose form, function, and meaning are created for the general public through public process. I found it interesting, actually, through a public process. I hadn't thought of that. Community characteristics of public art are public accessibility, public realm placement, community involvement, public process, including public funding. The works can be permanent or temporary. We should remember So I go back 50 years or so to remembering my undergraduate art training to come up with a few kind of questions that we might or might not address as we work our way through this evening. But my mentor was Dr. Alan Gowans, who was head of the History and Art Department here at the University of Victoria. And his favorite kind of question to the class was, what does art do? You always have to ask the question, what, in this case, does public art do? So, those of you that came in, some of these, well, they all actually, all these little pieces I'm going to mention have appeared in the slides, but not what I'm talking about them necessarily. So, there are 4 or 5 things that art does. And we look at them, we call some of them the arts of conviction and persuasion. So that was this first kind of category. Arts of conviction, for instance, Queen Victoria in front of the Parliament buildings, declaring, of course, that Canada owes its settler origins to Great Britain. Everybody knows that. It just reinforces the idea. Another thing, stained glass windows in churches. The New Jerusalem East window in the Anglican Cathedral was on the screen a few moments ago. The faithful know what they mean and what they are. They're just there to reinforce, belief, faith. Arts of persuasion. We now move into the educational function of arts, or propaganda, call it what you will. I would put into that category Captain Vancouver and his various worthies I show, I think McQuinnett and McLaughlin, that adorn the library building at the back of the Parliament buildings. Where, when the Parliament buildings was built, they were struggling with the idea, well, we are now a province of British Columbia, right? And here's our legacy, and here's what we are. On the other hand, the Lekwungen territorial spindle whorls that mark their territory around can be viewed from both ways. On the one hand, they educate us as to the pre-settlement community that was here for 10,000 years plus. But for the Lekwungen people, Songhees and Esquimalt, they just reinforce what they already know. But of course, we can't forget beautification. And I think I showed up here Susan Point's mural on the Johnson Street Parkade called Woven Together. Brings to life that otherwise rather sad building. Or, in a more dramatic way, George Norris's sculptural panels, which front the UVic library. Those of us who spend time at UVic undergraduate years will never, I don't think, ever forget those. Arts do other things, of course. One is substitute imagery. And for that, I would say The Homecoming, the tableau telling a story in a harbor by Nathan Scott, where the images substitute for real people performing in front of you, frozen in a moment, as it were then. And of course, arts are illustrative, arts of illustration. And the best example is brand new, just put up a little while ago, the new Chinatown mural on the side of the Ten Temple building by Carolyn Long. Take a close look at it the next time you walk by. It actually has a little story going on there about the fire that came close to destroying the temple 40 years ago or so now, and draws on ancient Chinese symbols of birth and rebirth to kind of bring that story into focus and appropriately uplifting for Chinatown. So, with those few thoughts, I'll call on JC to open us up here, and if I can get rid of this PowerPoint. pressed on the wrong one. Hold on. No? Copyright. JC.
Thank you. Oh, I think we have to get to the start of the slideshow first.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
You got it?
I'll figure it out. Hi. I am JC Scott. I'm a designer and an artist. I've lived in Victoria since 1980. I came to Chinatown, where I was the 5th artist to be in Chinatown. And I recognized the opportunity, having been in Gastown before that and having had friends in Yorkville, that we had a special opportunity in Chinatown, in that it was basically empty. There were these fantastic studio spaces available. And I made a deal with my landlord, the wonderful Dick Joe, related to Charlene Thornton Joe, who's now running the Chinatown Chinese Museum. I said, Dick, if you let me introduce artists to this neighborhood, we'll make a difference. And he said, okay, show me your portfolio. So I went upstairs and I got one, and I had been a mural painter in Vancouver. So I was able to show him stuff. I was delighted by his nerve and by him. And I've been involved in public art virtually all my life. I paid for my university education by being with my brother, some of the first hippie craftsmen. In Canada, we sold tie-dye t-shirts and beaded bracelets at the Kingston Farmers Market. The next week there was 7 artists. The next year there were 40 artists. And that put me all my life, in terms of my career and my arts awareness, in touch with the public. The oddest thing about that first day at the market was we had made things over the winter with friends. We were hippies, we had long hair, we did drugs, we had fun. And we made a couple of things that were sort of as a joke, the worst colors that we could put together. And by accident, one of those rings ended up on the table, and it was the first thing that sold. And that was educational for me. I respect the public and feel that it's really important that any community has a public that's aware of the arts, that it wants to celebrate or that it will celebrate. Mozart didn't just come out of a place that had no appreciation for music. Thousands of people were studying music where he wrote his. Picasso and the Impressionists and all those famous people from Paris at the turn of the last century didn't just pop out. The public that came to those exhibitions, the famous Salon des Refusés, etc., were painting at home. There was an awareness of art in those communities. We need an awareness of art, public art, here in British Columbia. We need a much better one. I would argue, much better one than a situation where we can have a city council that would decide that they should remove public art and replace it with a splash pool so that the police have an easier job of moving people from Centennial Square because they'll have the law on their side. That's disgusting, and that's why I'm here tonight. This is the first mural that I painted in Vancouver with the Peer Group Mural Company. It was called Pigeon Park. That was on the cover of the Weekend magazine, my father finally accepted that I wasn't going to be a lawyer. I was going to be an artist, after all. And Robert Amos, locally famous, was also one of the members of the Terry Mural Company. We had a fantastic studio in the waterfront of Gastown. We knew the Greenpeace people. The Rainbow Warrior used to park at our dock before going off to New Zealand, or I can't remember the place in Alaska. Anyway,
Alaska.
I painted murals for many years in Vancouver. This is one I painted solo. That's me standing at the bottom in this double exposure. It was quite an experience. And also, with 5 other artists, we painted the longest painting that may have ever been painted in Canada, 1,400, I think it says, feet, the Day-On mural during the summer of Habitat. And it was kind of fun. We started out unknown, and by the end of it, my goal had been in being an artist in Vancouver was to become a famous Canadian artist in a big city within 5 years. And at 4.5 years, I got on a bus, and the bus driver said, "You're that mural painter, aren't you?" And I went, "Yes, I am." He said, "You can ride my bus for free." And I thought, John Lennon, working man's hero, that's it. I made it. And quite soon after that, I retreated to my more normal self and came to Victoria. In Victoria, in Chinatown, I realized this was a very conservative city and possibly could use some brightening up. And so we had parties. This looks like it's one of the Halloween parties. The most famous were erotic art for April Fools. But for over 20 years, we proved in Chinatown that we had a hot enough art community here. Joni Mitchell came looking for me one day from California. We got the word out. Poets came from San Francisco to read their erotic poems. Sukian Lee from the CDC Now played 3 times at our parties with her band Bob Chirongo. My career has allowed me to travel. This is one of my favorite fountains. I'm sure any of you Francophiles will get it. This has an Italian name, but it's in Copenhagen. This is the coolest recent public art that I've experienced in Chicago.
Go back one.
I'll go back one and leave it on that. I don't really know what more to say except that I have devoted my time in Victoria when I wasn't working for a living or just being with my friends, but my volunteer time, all of it, has been for the public art through the Community Arts Council, Public Art Committee, the galleries in Chinatown. And it's because I think people wanted me to be a doctor. I had the marks and that sort of stuff. But my attitude is that real wellness comes from happiness and health and the positive side of life. And I believe that that's what the arts can and must do for a community. And that we must fight for it. And that's what I'm here for tonight, is to fight for the arts, to fight for the positive side of our culture at a time when it desperately needs that. We've certainly got enough angst going on. And I just ask all of you, and I'm sure you have, but ask all of your friends to just go and look at that beautiful fountain. And look at it long enough until you see what it's an abstract, but it's not that abstract. You can figure it out if you look at it. He's telling a story, an important story. And it's a really important piece of art, and most importantly, to let politicians knock down one of the first and most important pieces of public art in this city so that they can help their police do a job which they should be doing a better job of anyway, by putting in a splash park that won't get used, but that will allow them to say, move along, buddy, this is the playground. That's just, I'll try and stay positive and happy and say, let's not let that.
Great.
J.C. Scott is well known for, what I say, not shutting up. You will read his letters and his op-eds in the newspaper from time to time, and I think he's been averaging about once every 2 weeks. Maybe it's just his thing is frustrating. But, let's get Hilarion to show up here and we'll move on. Hilarion,
Thank you.
over to you.
What,
That one will push it forward.
Good evening, everyone. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Project. Thank you very much for coming. This is, I'm going to say a little bit intimidating. I haven't spoke to a home crowd in years, so it's a thrill. It's a thrill. I'm going to just talk really what it is about what I do as an artist, and I don't think I'll be as succinct as Mr. Scott, but I'll try. So I don't want to cause a problem, but I'm from Scarborough. My parents during the war, my mother was in German camps, concentration camps. She was Russian. And my father was a Brit, and he served in Indian Ceylon during the war. When he came back on his way to be demobilized in London, he studied German. He was very fluent. So he went in as part of the Marshall Plan and did the rebuilding of Germany. And my parents met in Toronto in '55, and their common language was German. And that's what I grew up with in good old Scarborough, was German and listening to my mom learn to speak English. So, you know, my parents, and you know, it was where I grew up in Scarborough, we were all immigrants there. We're all, you know, post-war immigrants, and you know, the story of my life wasn't much different than anyone else's there. So my parents, they were brutalized by the war, and growing up, they would always take me to Algonquin Park, and they could not believe this landscape, because they came out of this brutalized landscape of Germany, and here they are, and they just kept going back to Algonquin. So as a child, I spent a lot of time in Algonquin Park, and does everyone know where Algonquin Park is? Yeah. Everyone from Ontario? Yeah, probably. Yeah. But it was, and you know, here I am. I'm a young lad, and I was emotionally taken by this landscape. It just blew me away, and I love Shield Country. And I'm a landscape architect now, professionally. And when I start, I'm just so excited. I start designing something, and emotionally, the first place I go to is Shield Country. And I go, no, you're in British Columbia. But it's just so in my being that it's a big part of what makes up my fabric of the work that I do. And isn't it great that that's where the group of 7 decided to show what Canadian art was by, you know, depicting Algonquin Park. And I will be very honest, I have a man/artist crush on Tom Thompson. He's just, fantastic. So to me, I look at him and I go, you know, all these Canadian artists, and it was really the start of my inspiration of my work. So, am I not doing it?
Put it on the wrong screen.
That's why I usually have my kids here.
Okay.
Okay. Start it over again.
Play from start, Martin. Upper left corner. Down, no, down, left. Play from start, right there. There, there. Ah!
Thank you,
So
Casey.
this is Commerce Canoe, and it was originally in Bastion Square. Did this in 2008, and what Commerce Canoe was about the First Nations trade that occurred up and down, and the focal point was Victoria Harbour. And one of the things that blew me away was camas seed was a protein, was a plant protein that was used extensively in trade. And I'm sure everyone knows that if you start looking at Garry Oak meadows, that's where a lot of camas grows. And on our property, we have a lot of camas growing. So that's what this piece was primarily about, was First Nations trade. So 12 years later, I got a phone call from the city, and they asked me if I would be willing to move my piece. It was a First Nations artist who wanted the site, and I said, certainly. And then they said to me, after I agreed, they said, well, we have a place for you. I said, well, where is it? And it was a spot at Wharf and Johnson. And I was thrilled, because it was a nice big space, and I felt that my piece would take on that site. My mother-in-law and my wife were not happy. They made it very clear that they preferred Bastion Square, but I had to explain this is how it worked. So, and it was interesting. 12 years later, I took the piece down, refurbished it, and my wife, who's also a landscape architect, both of us designed the space in for its location. That was fun, and I certainly enjoyed working on that with her. And the city, I have to say, the city was remarkable to work with. They were great. The planner that I worked with, Joaquin, was phenomenal man. His capacity, he understood what the issues were, and it was great. So I felt it was a great experience, because the whole site was I don't know if you know, the whole area it's all fill in there. When they destroyed Chinatown, a lot of the fill went in there. So it's a little bit of an archaeological nightmare in there. So, you know, we were excavating. I had to work with an archaeologist, and we would find things. And it was, it was stressful. So anyway, but the people I worked with, the engineers, all the contractors that were helping, it was remarkable. It went really well. And that was I will say this, I build, my wife, Twyla and I build all our gardens together. We're design, build, landscape architects. So we've done a lot of experience building. This was a high stress location. The traffic that was around there, it had to be just so well planned, and the timing to get cranes and all that sort of stuff. So it was a challenge. But you know, we got it in, and I feel that the one thing is I had a bit of a discussion, a heated discussion about the plant material. We saw the plant material being going one direction, but the city, the Parks Department insisted that they wanted to see indigenous plant material. And I feel that their choices were really successful. And so far it's been working, so it hasn't failed, so it was a good experience. Here, it's posters. It's kind of fun, you know, you do these work, you do this public art, and all of a sudden, there it is. It's, you know, in posters and things like that. It's kind of warms one's heart. I feel like, you know, I've been very, very, very fortunate in my career. I just feel so lucky. And be clear, I like control. And I love control, in fact. And as does Twyla. And and that's one of the reasons why we build, is because we design these things. And then when we're building, we continue to design and we refine our work. And for the architects who are in this room, don't have to do as many working drawings. So that's kind of nice. So we build it on site, and it's very rich. But you know, I know how to build. I know how to work with engineers, and I know how to work with a team of consultants. And in my public art, I know how to work with my engineers. I know how to work with fabricators. And it's dollars and cents, it's money. So when I'm working with fabricators, I buy the material and I get everything formed, and I show up at a fabricator with everything formed, and we assemble. And that way I'm not, I'm not adding 20%, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a way of keeping costs down, and it's a way of being in control. And the fabricators that I work with, United Engineering is one of them. They're lovely, lovely, lovely people. They're sensitive, and the fellows I work with, they're sensitive, and they understand what I want. And the best thing is they've got a shop that's 50 feet high. It's got a crane in it, so I can go high in there. So I feel pretty lucky. But and the nice thing is there's always a balance of, do I do it in Vancouver? Do I do it here? And I tend to do it here and balance the cost of what it costs to transport it. Let's say I work to Vancouver or somewhere else, because the cost of doing it here, I don't have to pay for hotels and transport and stuff like that. It's far cheaper to do that and send it over on the ferry. But there's always the hassle of making sure. Oh, okay, I'll talk faster. Anyway, I'm starting to go on. But anyway, this is just an example of the kind of work that we're doing. And here we are. This is the wall. Successful part with this is that the ring at the top, we put it in stainless steel. People skateboard on it, it just doesn't damage anything. So here's the work. This is the piece I did in, this is Taproot. I did this in 2017. No, 2018. That's on the Yellow Building. What was interesting about this is that I marked everything on the wall where it was supposed to go. I marked all the location connection points. We had to put a surveyor across on the roof of the other building. Surveyor shot all the points. Then we went to the fabrication shop and he laid it out. So that's the points that we all worked to. So when we installed it, we were within 1/8 of an inch. Really, it was great. This is a piece called Burgeoning. I did this in 2018. It's in North Vancouver. It's aluminum. And it was a new building, and they said, well, it's this idea of, new architecture, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, right. So I wanted to put, I decided, okay, I'll do the traditional landscape architects thing and put planting on the building, and they liked it. So that piece there is 60 feet long, about 50 feet wide, 8 feet deep. And then I continued it on the building. And I did this one about 2 months later, and this is called Leave It to Me, and it's in North Vancouver as well. And it was just about maple leaves. At the back of the property, there was a protected forest next to the stream, and it was all maples. And it was about supporting the maples in the back. This is the Lost Airman of the Empire at the north end of the airport. This is probably one of the saddest pieces I've ever done. It was for the 179 people who died while training at the location of the airport. There was a base there during the war, and they were training pilots from around the world there. And when I won it, I remember the day I got the list of people who died. And these people were my father's age. And it was just brutal. It was just one after the other. And then after I did it, about 2 years later, people from around the world started contacting me. Said, "Oh, you did the piece. My uncle's name is this, but my aunt's name is this. Can you find your name, put a flower in it, and take a picture of it?" And I was doing that for about 2 years. And then all of a sudden, you start getting this information about these people. Like the last train ride they took from Saskatchewan. It was just brutal. But this was, what was interesting is this site was, it was the site of the old hospital, and people would come there because they were plane watchers, and it would be families coming there to see their loved ones go off and get deployed. So, the site was already used, so this just created more of a formalized location for people just to mingle with the memory of the people who'd fallen. And it's the feathers from a Cooper hawk, which is its northern reach is Ladysmith, and they're ferocious fighters. So it's a metaphor for training pilots. This is a piece called Succession 2. This was in Burnaby, and this is about after a forest has been destroyed, the first growth that comes up is, and the process of it regrowing is called succession, and that's what this was. This was a condominium complex. And there's construction shots. And the last image is Sticks and Stones, which is in Squamont. I did that with Frank Ambrosio. And Frank, well, I'll say insisted that we use that we use the wood from the building, and it was beautiful wood. So the rocks, I laminated them together, and then a CNC machine shaped them with rocks this big, and then they cut them. So I really quite like this piece. It's quite different than the flavor of my other works. So the only thing I was worried about was using wood outside, so I laminated it. I put the sealer on it like crazy. So far so good. And that's it. So thank you, Sir Lennon.
Thank you, Lurian. Yeah, it's amazing how you walk around a town, a city, or you're somewhere, and you notice it, and then you don't. And being an art historian myself, my eyes are always open to art. But it becomes, if you live in a city, it becomes part of the fabric. So that grounds you in it. And I think, with things like, the example point, the Centennial Fountain, Centennial Square, you're kind of used to it being there. And when it suddenly isn't, if you live in a place a long time, it's part of you disappears with it. So Larian, I think your piece is going to grow like that. And I hope they have the respect and support of those people who take a different view, see art as just a commodity to have and throw away when, in their view, it gets old and tired or something. So if I could have the panel come forward, and we'll put you at the table, and I will then ask the two people who haven't spoken yet to open our discussion, perhaps with some points, and we'll move along from there. So, Larian, Robert, and Jason.
So the microphone can be moved around or can pick you all up collectively. You want to be absolutely recorded well, the microphone forward.
So my part of it is pretty important, so whether I caught it or not. Pam, I'll give you to open it up. Maybe you could, you have a wealth of experience, city council, and with the arts community. So how does it work? How do we end up with public art in our public spaces in the city of Victoria?
Thanks very much, Martin. I'm very pleased to be here this evening as well. And I wanted to thank Chris for his opening comments about being proper, because this is going to be one of those rare occasions when I might not have been feeling terribly proper. I think these days, the feelings of frustration and sometimes heartbreak with what's happening, not only with public art, but with so many other things, are really front of mind. So I appreciated that little warning, and one of the subsequent speakers talking about trying to maintain a sense of being positive as well. So what I can talk to you about is my experience with the City of Victoria and the Art in Public Places Committee, as it's known. I was elected to council in 1993, and I was on council until 2018. And for that, as best I recall, for that whole time, I was the council liaison to the Art in Public Places Committee. And one of the wonderful things about that committee was that it was made up of a wonderful cross-section of members of the community. We had working artists, we had emerging artists, we had the director of the art gallery, we had the executive director of one of the local art schools, we had First Nations artists, we had Chief Tony Hunt and Chief Randy Cook towards the end of my tenure as well. So you had a wonderful cross-section around our table. And so when this evening was being planned, one of the first things I thought I would do was go onto the city website and find out who is the current council liaison to the Public Art Committee, so I could invite them to attend this evening. And I was really surprised to discover not only is there not a council liaison to the Art in Public Places Committee, but there is no Art in Public Places Committee. It has not been reconstituted, there have not been reappointments. And so with everything that's being dealt with Centennial Square, and in particular the fountain, where you would have expected at a minimum a referral to the Art in Public Places Committee, that body just doesn't exist right now. So what is happening, and it's a thing that I tried to avoid as much as I possibly could when I was the liaison to that committee, is it simply become political, with city councilors making decisions about public art. And that was something that I always thought was a very big mistake. And I think the integrity of the Art in Public Places Committee and the work that it does is so important, and that it's at arm's length from elected officials. And so for all the time that I was the liaison to that committee, I was there to make sure that the process ran smoothly and to be able to recount the sort of undertakings. But one of the things I'm most proud of, I never ever expressed my personal view about a single piece of public art that went through that jurying process, because I don't believe that that's the role of elected officials. So we really do that. One thing that I did take very very seriously as a member of council was the stewardship of existing pieces of public art and public infrastructure. And the two projects that I became most involved with, and Martin alluded to me selling t-shirts and bags to raise money and fundraising dinners, it was the restoration of the Gate of Harmonious Interest in Chinatown. And again, I just felt as a member of council, I was one of the stewards of that piece of public infrastructure, and I took that responsibility very seriously. And we did raise the money to restore the gates in Chinatown. The next one I took on, and it was certainly a learning experience, was the restoration of the totem pole in Beacon Hill Park. Staff had come to us saying that the pole was in need of restoration, and what they thought the best way to deal with that was to take it down, put it somewhere, and then figure out what to do. And I thought, I've seen so many things disappear, this just cannot happen. So I asked council if they would sort of give me, as a member of council, the money they were going to use to transport it and store it to actually start the restoration of the totem pole. And again, we had a fundraising committee, we had all kinds of ways of helping to subsidize the cost of that. And we had a committee with all sorts of people with a lot of experience, including members of the Hunt family who had originally been involved with the pole. So to me, as an elected official, that is part of your responsibility. It's to be a steward, but it's also to make informed decisions. And what's happening with Centennial Square is something that I find so frustrating, because there is no one who is informed about the history of Centennial Square. I have sent a link to the DVD about the history of Centennial Square to mayor and council, most of whom have not responded. So I don't even know if they've seen it, because I thought it would help to inform their decisions about the fountain. But what I would like to say, I think it's the most important thing about Centennial Square and what's happened now with the fountain, is what I basically call death by 1,000 cuts. And when you look back on the history of Centennial Square, every intervention that has happened subsequent to the creation of that square has been made in isolation and has been to the detriment of the square. And we're about to go down that path again. And ironically, the first intervention that I think was extremely detrimental to the vibrancy of the square was, it actually involved the fountain itself. That tiara that surrounds it was actually designed to human proportion. So I remember as a teenager, you could go there, put your feet up, have your book, and it was, the cast in place concrete would absorb the heat, and you had the water beside you, and it was absolutely wonderful. Well, one of the counselors of the day decided they didn't like the look of those people sitting around the fountain, because they had acoustic guitars and love beads and Roman sandals. There wasn't a joint in sight, so I don't know, this was pretty benign. And so they instructed staff to make it as inhospitable as possible. So as a result, you see the rough cast stucco that is now on it, which makes it next to impossible to sit comfortably in place, unless you happen to travel with an inflatable rubber donut. So again, if you don't know that story, and when I was on council, we put together a budget of what it would cost to reinstate the tiara with the smooth surfaces and restore the monoliths and all of that. But again, if you're making decisions and you don't know about that, you just see things that you don't think are actually working. And so, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but if you look at the interventions to the square, what has actually improved it? One of the first things was the loss of the restaurant as an appendage to the McPherson Theater, and all that wonderful mid-century work that was done by the architect Alan Hodgson, and his wife Sheila Hodgson is here tonight. It's wonderful to see you here, Sheila.
I have a question.
Yep, there'll be a chance, not to worry. And then the Spirit Square and stage that went in. And again, this was a situation where there was no opportunity for planning. The province was offering grants for spirit squares around the province related to the Olympics. And the premier of the time came to the mayor and said, if you can just do this without process and just get on with it, you can get the money. And so it went ahead in a very abrupt fashion. So you've got part of the Spirit Square where you have the totem poles and a piece of sculpture, but then you have the Spirit stage itself. And it has been detrimental to the operations of the McPherson Theatre, because when something goes on the outside stage, because it's attached to the back of the McPherson, you hear it inside. And because of the way it's designed, with the addition of the structural columns, in addition to the structural columns of the McPherson, it's unusable. And so they then created a portable stage to put in front of it to expand the stage that was too small to work. And because of that, they had to remove the interactive water feature, which is now what people are saying they want to replace the fountain with, which is an interactive water feature. Well, does anybody around the decision-making table know? Yet there was an interactive water feature, and it was removed for a variety of reasons. And so in order to make an informed decision, you really do need to know that. So I think my main message is what is so important is stewardship and knowledge and informed decisions. And unfortunately, with the Centennial Square Fountain and the square itself, it's just more of the same that we've already experienced, and unfortunately really diminished the square itself. So I hope I was not too provocative, and that I was proper, Chris, and that won't get edited out.
Keep it on.
We'll get into the general audience after Robert, so I'm just going to give Robert a chance, because Robert, you're a practicing artist, graphic designer. You've been co-chair of a number of community arts organizations, chair, co-chair, active in. You've also been chair of the Downtown Residents Association, so it's like wearing all these hats.
Yes.
And maybe you'd like to talk about that a little bit, because you must have several points of view.
Well, I guess,
Role.
yeah, because I've seen it from a few angles. Actually, I was part of we had like a day-long workshop for the Centennial Square, the Spirit Square, and they had, I think Mr. Hodgins was there. I think he was one of the people that was invited. Hodgson, and so there was a day-long workshop, and they broke out into groups of 3 in Centennial and upstairs overlooking the square. So there was a discussion. Now, I don't know how productive it was, or whether the city planners that were putting it on already had their foregone conclusion already set in mind when they set us all at these tables, but they did talk about things. And I could get the sense that they were, the city planners, and each of the 3 groups had their own city planner, and there was like an architect and a community person and all these things, and the fountain did come up, and you just got the sense that they were kind of trying to steer us away from being too married to the fountain. Like they're trying to, think big, don't get too wound up in what's already there. Clear your mind and then think what else you could do. And I think people were excited about keeping the fountain, but you could tell that wasn't really the mood of the people that were moving the things around. As far as the fountain itself, I do remember the original smooth. I think it was almost like a terrazzo or a polished concrete. I do remember that. But my memory of it was, at some point, there was an intermediate stage. I think they put quartz on it. And like sharp quartz, like to make it like painful. And my other recollection was at some point after that, they realized, well, maybe that's too much, and then they put the stucco, then they put the cement stucco on it. So I think that was City Hall going, well, we're not sure how we feel about pain, but mildly discomfort seems to be the point we're trying to get at. So, I would love to if they could get a chisel and take off all that frosting and get back to the smooth tiara. That would be a great way to, if we're going to keep this fountain, that I think we have to do that, even if it means maybe reconstructing it from scratch. I heard City Hall saying, well, we're going to keep the Wilkinson monoliths. Don't worry, those aren't going anywhere. But I think we know from experience, once something is taken, it's gone. And we've seen so many, we have a list of things that are missing. and we'll never see them again, like the Elsa Mayhew sculptures that used to be outside the Crystal Garden. Oh, they're somewhere out there. But yeah, so I've seen it from that perspective, sort of the community, and also as an artist as well. I was one of the artists when they announced the Bastion Square competition. Me and all the other starving artists in town, we ran to the courthouse, in the Maritime Museum courthouse upstairs, and we listened to the presentation because we were saying, "Whoa, this big money, this one, this is going to be good." And I never put a submission in because I'm a 2D artist, and I just don't see clearly in 3 dimensions the way you folks can. And so I was going to make like a 20-foot tall sculpture. It's like a cubist thing out of weathered steel, out of Corten steel. It was going to be like prows and bows of ships and capstans all sort of conglomerated together, but I couldn't wrap my head around actually how to get it from out of my head into a sort of a maquette that I could present to the engineers that you have such a great working relationship with. I think I needed another person at the table with me to help me out on that. But I was interested in the square, and I don't know how I would have reacted if someone came up to me 10 years later, if I had won the competition, and said, "That's got to go because people don't like it and council doesn't like it." And I was shocked that a piece of sculpture that was designed for that space, that City Hall would just say, "Well, we want to move it," especially when it was the opinions of city council. This is what just blew me away was when city councilors were getting involved in this. And I don't want to name names, but Ben Issa was the one that said, "It's jarring." He literally said, Commerce Canoe was jarring and it's out of place. And next thing you know, it was relocated. I think it's great where it is now. It seems to still work and occupy the space. I think it's remarkable when you can take a sculpture out of a space it was designed for and relocate it into a different space and it still seems to work. I think that's pretty remarkable. It's credit to the artist and all the other people that worked around it doing the landscaping. But that was supposed to be another art. Like the bridge was supposed to have its own artwork, and that never happened. And I think part of the reason was the budget just got out of control. I think the budget for yours was like $90,000 or something like that. Maury Baden's Pavilion Rock and Shell outside the marina, that was the arena, was I think $120,000 budget. I think the Orca surfboard concept that was planned for outside the bridge, that was, I think they started at like $250,000, then it was $300,000. And it just kept going up, and I think the roofs are like maybe $450,000. Well, they haven't even bought the steel yet. I mean, who knows where it would have ended up. I know the cost of steel is higher than it was since 2008. The cost of aluminum has doubled after COVID. It's back down now, but who knows where it's going to be.
It got really affected by the war, by the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
Most of my aluminum came from Russia.
There you go, yeah. So, it can be 6 months to a year from the time that you submit your proposal to the time they actually, okay, well, let's start buying all this material. And so if City Hall, whoever's funding it, in some cases you're private developers funding it, if they say, well, we'll give you $300,000 and then we haven't even talked about labor. Is it even feasible? You have to start scaling it back. And I think that's why you haven't seen much public art lately. It's the finances have really killed it, as well as the politics.
Public
You
art
have to use the microphone in the future.
Bill Cornelius wants to ask a question.
I'm going to open it up to the audience, but is there anything anybody passionately wants to say before I do?
Bill Cornelius wants to ask a question.
I feel passionate about Bill.
Sheila, you had a question.
I did. I'm just wondering if this is the gentleman who might know who decided to put that flowing piece of McPherson Playhouse up on the upper part of the entry. I realized that Alan's design was not as visible as that sign up on the facade. But the style is so out of keeping with the rest of the theater. Alan was a minimalist.
Yeah,
He liked sharp, clean corners.
yeah.
And that sign that's down below, could you not have just put it up higher or something, instead of that fancy flowing McPherson? It just irritated him so much that we stopped
I
going.
can't visualize it. Do you know?
It's a neon sign.
Oh,
The lit person.
oh, okay.
He's given up, by the time he died, he's given up.
Yeah, yeah. Again, it was great to have him as part of that workshop. This is like 2009 or something, or 2010. We were there, and it was great to have him there, but again, I don't know whether anything he said was really being absorbed by any of the people there. You can only,
Who made that decision?
It would have been the management and board of the Royal McPherson Society.
So it was a committee decision, not.
Oh,
I can't tell you for sure because I
Yeah.
wasn't involved, but I do know that that's how decisions of the Royal McPherson are made, is through the board and management.
yeah, one of many organizations involved in that.
Just passing curiosity.
No.
Somebody else had a question, a burning, far back. Yes, sir.
I'll stand up. It's quite interesting listening to
Come forward, Bill, so we can hear you in the microphone.
Bill, you might just say who you are, too.
My name is,
Yeah.
my name is Jose Jimenez. My name is Bill Porteous, and I'm an artist, and I had the pleasure of serving on the Public Arts Advisory Committee for about 14 years.
Bill and I were co-chairs,
With
and
Pam.
Pam was our city liaison.
Anyway, and
Swallow the mic, Bill, put it close to your mouth.
I had a thought as I was listening to the presentations and some of the discussion, and my thought was this: how do we get the politicians to police the politicians? That's that's as straight a line as I can draw to the point I think that might make a difference. Because, and Pam knows this, because how many years did we spend on revising the art policy, which apparently now is where, in a wastebasket or in a drawer somewhere? I mean, it is kind of incredulous, in a way. So, Pam mentioned another interesting word, arm's length. As far as my experience is, we never had arm's length. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, but how do you get people who are invested in getting elected again? How do they deal with the public outcry and outrage when public money is going to be used for a piece of artwork? And there's no dialogue, there's no continuity in the dialogue from year to year, let alone council to council. Another thought I had was when we had the new council arrive, did they have a handbook with the arts policy in it? I mean, this is not rocket science, folks. This is basic human interaction and thinking and respect for what has been laid down. So how do politicians, I guess, are quite powerful, they can just go, yeah, I don't want that. So I think that's the problem. It's a structural problem. And believe me, I have children. I've lived in the city since 1974. And I understand there's a lot of people suffering. They need 3 square meals. They need a place to live. So if art has to compete, every time there's money because of the arts policy, which is now, again, somewhere else, I guess, how is it going to compete with those things unless it has some teeth? Unless there's an ongoing belief and support and kind of renewal, each time that art is not an extra. Art is not an afterthought. It's not a decoration. We're talking about what's the function of art. I mean, if we have to keep discussing as adults, what's the purpose of art? Where have we been? How do you have history without art? Artifacts. I mean, so it's, to me, it's so obvious, like the nose on your face. We take it for granted, because you know what? The artists I know in this committee, they're gonna do it anyway. Well, I don't sit around and wait for public money to do art. It costs me money, usually, and time. So, education, kind of no nonsense, you know, take no for an answer, no. But that's difficult when you're dealing with the politics. And so I think that would be my contribution to tonight. We've got to fix it structurally so that it doesn't come up for, do we want it or don't we want it every time someone new gets elected. That's the problem. There's got to be some continuity. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Bill was my drawing teacher 30 years ago at the Victoria College of Art. So. Yes.
Well, I think we've all been reading in the media about the challenges that all councils have with the budget these days. And I had the ear of one of the councillors at a committee meeting I was at recently, and as one of the other members said, there's a really easy way to cut upwards of $8 million from the budget for this year and going into next year. And it's really simple. Leave Centennial Square alone.
I also want to say, like, I think the big thing is the moving away from the competition. I think the Bastion Square competition that was involved, I think that kind of thing is a thing of the past. I don't think you'll see Victoria putting those things out already. I think the model they're working towards now is the artist in residence model. And I think that's where they're shifting the money around. So now they'll have an artist in residence, and the definition of art is broadened. So it's no longer sculpture. In fact, it might not even be visual arts. It could be music or spoken word or poetry, and the money's being spread a little bit around, so we're getting a smaller piece of the pie. And that also means that because it's an artist in residence, there's a lot more collaborative works, and there's a lot more ephemeral works. So you're seeing lately, you know, if you look at what public art has been made around the last couple of years, a lot of murals, you know, which I don't know how long a mural lasts around, depends on how well they maintain it. I mean, we're getting some fantastic indigenous art. Probably some of the indigenous art we're even getting some of the best in the world. But apart from that and the murals, there's not a lot of that. Traditionally, what we like to see, like these public spaces, pieces that you can walk around, that you can enjoy, and that you'll know will be there a generation from now as well.
I knew Clive Justice quite well towards the end of his life, and Clive was the landscape architect for Centennial Square. He was working with the same group of architects that designed the square up on the University of Victoria campus. So the idea of a round entity, you know, the ring road that's repeated in the square in a way, as you can see, it's sort of going on in sort of numerous heads at the same time. The actual fountain, which was a deep collaboration actually with Jack Wilkerson, the artist, of course, but Alan Hodgson and Rod Clack, the newly appointed city planner at the time, was truly a collaborative, you know, piece of work. And Clive, you know, often referred to it in our conversations that it was, you know, in his own history of work, it was a major piece that he went on. For instance, he designed urban landscapes in Malaysia, northern India, and the campus landscape plan for the University of Saskatchewan, which is all done in grasses. Very, very clever, so it looks, you know, it looks local, situated, year-round. It's a clever piece of work. J.C. Scott, interior, exterior work, public art can be inside as well as outside. Have you done much of that?
Yes, I do believe that public art can be inside. Certainly, it's the art that is inside public buildings. We don't have very much of it in Canada. If we go to Europe, we would find that most public buildings have art in their interiors. I think the sense of public in North America tends to, however, be the street. And I think I support that. If we look at the tradition of European art being within these grand public buildings, they were originally palaces. And there's a feudal sense of fancy art being inside a fancy building that I'm not sure is appropriate for North America. I think our sense of public art, my sense of public art in North America today is more celebrated by graffiti art than a sculpture within a formal building. And that's why I think it's really important that we do take care of our streets, and that we take care of our streets in a better way. And I want to get back to the point that I firmly believe the only reason that City Council wants a splash park in Centennial Square is so that the police can move homeless people away. And I think that's a terrible, terrible reason for a major piece of public art to be removed, or even to be considered to be removed. I certainly agree with Bill. Bill and I obviously agreed for 14 odd years as co-chairs of the art committee. And somewhat controversial art was actually approved and created. I don't believe that this, let's hire somebody who's really nice and call them an artist in residence, and we can then call that public art, actually has anything to do with public art from my point of view. I mean, it's great to have poets and musicians working with and for the city and to be sponsored, but I'm a little bit afraid of the pet dog syndrome when somebody is beholden to the Pope kiss my ring, or the mayor do as I say, in terms of public art. I preferred the fact that we took a lot of hell for the sculpture in front of the memorial, because people said, well, it's ugly. Well, the point was, Guernica is ugly. It was an anti-war protest piece. That artist was trying to say, we shouldn't have bombers, and when we do have bombers, they're going to get killed. Like Valerian, that's a beautiful work, by the way, at the airport. He managed to take an awful subject and bring some beauty to it. But it wasn't meant to be beautiful. That piece of art in front of the Memorial Arena was meant to be art. It was meant to make people think, and it was meant to tell them about the horrors of war. Well, we're not going to get that kind of public art from this council unless you, us, demand it, unless we say we want real art in our city. Because 30,000 people come to the Moss Street painting. 30 or 40,000 people support Symphony Splash. The public here is an art-supporting public. We need an art-supporting council.
When are you going to
Yeah.
Too
So-
smart for that.
Right at the back. Gene.
Can I speak from
Another
here?
radical.
Another radical.
Can I speak from here?
You can be heard.
Thanks. I assume there are no city council members here this evening because it's Thursday. But is anyone here who represents the city in an official capacity? Chris. And I also wonder, are there any real estate developers here? The reason I raised that second question is because Frank D'Ambrosio is here and he works for a real estate developer, the Jawls, who seem to me to be exemplars of citizenship. And there is no school of developology. All you have to do is spin around 3 times and call yourself a developer, and you are. But the Jawls have in many cases not only made a point of producing exemplary buildings, but also one way or another adding public art or conspicuous art to those buildings. I also give credit, I think, to Don Charity and Fraser McCall. I wish there were some way to constrain or oblige the development community as they bring proposals to the city that would ensure that their development budgets included an allocation for public works in association with their buildings. And I can assure you, particularly given some of the buildings that are going up around downtown right now, that the allocation for public art would be just a rounding error. When Pam told us that the city has pretty much formally abandoned its interest in art in public places, I was distressed, but at the same time, I also thought that the city has handed the public an opportunity, particularly a public of advocates like the ones in this city, and also so many more who are part of the fabric and the culture of this community and celebrate and support art. To the extent that the city could stay out of the way, it's conceivable, I think, that a lot more public art might happen spontaneously and a lot more quickly. The other thing that crossed my mind is these are hard times, and I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. My worry, in fact, is that they may get worse. The city is financially constrained. It is likely to remain so. And other priorities, rather than art in public places, are likely to call out to council or council's budgeting process much more loudly. Which makes me think that there may be media that could be used in public art, fabric, paint, light, others, the costs of which from a creation and fabrication and installation perspective might be much less expensive than statuary, and that's why I think maybe if we could place more of an obligation on private developers to take over that responsibility, we could potentially swamp downtown with public art. Downtown needs all the help it can get, and the idea of 20 or 30 square blocks of highly visible public art that would just delight the public would, I think, warm all of our hearts. Victoria has intellectual pretensions. It's a bookish town. That makes me think of books and words and communication through language, even if it has a physical presence, as a probably unexplored opportunity for public art. But I'll conclude my thoughts just by saying that under certain circumstances and conditions, essentially leadership from us and other members in the community, I'm prepared to step up and lead a fundraising effort to raise funds to support the costs of additional art.
Thanks, Chris. It might be worth pointing out that the city sits on two budgets, top of two budgets. There's the operating budget, which is funded by yours and mine taxes, and of course is repeatable every year ad nauseum, except for the increases, which are also repeatable ad nauseum. The other is the capital. It's called various things. By my day, it was called Capital Works budget. And there's a fund, and the fund, the main source of money for that fund comes from capital cost charges, I think it's called. When somebody puts up a building, they pay into the fund to provide city amenities, civic amenities. And of course, it's a wide range of civic amenities, but I believe that that fund at the moment is something like 270 million sitting in the city of Victoria's coffers. Now, as a matter of fact, I think that's a very conservative number. I think it's substantially more now. It dates back a couple of years. In any event, money's money, you know, and money applied from one thing to another thing, different values are put on it. And the community creates those values, right? So it's up to citizens to make those, help make those choices. If council will let, and you know, otherwise you have to look forward to the next election. Unfortunately, now you've got to wait 4 years, but anyway, we won't open that one. We're probably pushing our time now, and I just...
We've got about 10 minutes.
About 10 minutes, okay. I wanted to kind of shift gears a bit, because Larry brought up a couple of very interesting points. First of all, you moved a sculpture, and I don't know if by moving it's a different narrative sort of got attached to it. And then you mentioned that out of the airport, people asking you to put a rose adjacent to a name and take a photograph. And I wonder if you've experienced the notion that, so you had an idea when you developed a work of art and executed it. And what about the public? And does the message, let's say, if there is a message or feeling or the perspective of a work of art change over time? And have you noticed that at all? Or maybe people don't tell you.
Thank you for opening the door about the Commerce Canoe and moving it. The important thing about Commerce Canoe, it was about the harbor. So the fact that and I was thinking about this earlier today, so the fact that it was close to the harbor, that made it okay. If it was somewhere else, it wouldn't work, because the dialogue with that piece was about the harbor, so that was good. The Lost Urban of the Empire has evolved and has changed, and in part because it's on a popular cycling route. A lot of people go there, and just the fact that different populations start showing up there, it's made this place evolve. I go there every Remembrance Day, and ever since I installed it. And this past year, there was 50 people there, which I thought was remarkable. And the people just are quiet at 11 o'clock. But every year with all these different people, when I talk to them, the whole nature of the place changes. So the fact that different groups use it for different reasons, this place is interactive and it's evolving, it's changing as a public space. So that warms my heart. And just because it's an object, we created the object and we created space, and people are using the space.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that, because I think it's important to realize that public art is dynamic, isn't it? I mean, take a piece of sculpture, it looks stationary and it's there, but it is dynamic in terms of how it's accepted and received by the community. Question? Yes?
It less of a question as sort of a comment, but...
You're a Saanachite. You might just explain what you do.
That's okay. I work for Saanich, but I'm here for the art. But it's more of a comment, but I open it up as a comment about public art and its relationship to space and to placemaking, which we love to talk about now. And Alarian, when you were speaking of your piece and the moving of Commerce Canoe, and now just clarified for us that moving it, you're actually happy that still with the intent of the piece, it's there. But something that's always struck me ever since, even when it was in the news that it was being moved, and you just spoke to it when your presentation was on, and you were okay with it, you were making space as well for what was coming in and the intention of that space in Bastion Square and the relationship that was being built there. And I think that's a very generous and a very, sometimes things change or need to change. And I'm just making a comment that I thought that's a really interesting way that public art can continue to relate to its place and also change the place and move it forward.
There's a gentleman there who has a question.
I'll do that.
A burning question. We've got room for one or two more burning questions, and then we'll...
Thank you very much. And thank you for your presentations and your introductions of your careers. It's fascinating. But I've come to this bit late. I'd just like to say I was born here in Victoria. I come from an old island family. And indeed, I can remember tossing pennies into the Centennial Fountain when I was a wee lad. And no, I didn't like when they put that stucco-y stuff on the tiara because it did hurt one's ass. My concern here right now is I'm learning much about your careers, your beautiful projects. We all love public art. I see this as a much larger issue myself. I was just behind the legislature the other day looking at another Centennial Fountain, which was created in 1962. And I've noticed that all of the original bronze plaques have been removed and replaced. I don't want to take up people's time tonight with that, but it is very disturbing. I put a call into the clerk of the legislature at least 3 weeks ago. I have yet to get a response. By the way, I'm an historian by profession, Daniel Marshall. I should introduce myself properly. And my concern here tonight is, and the reason I came in part, my good friends, is because I did not want to see that fountain taken down. I love that fountain. And Martin, what you were saying earlier, when you've been seeing these things over a lifetime, they become part of the landscape. They become part of oneself. I think the city gets toyed with enough. I didn't like it when the beautiful Victoria Brewery buildings came down on Government Street. I helped fight on that one. We fought for like hell with Mayor Peter Paulin and Alderman Cooper to get the train moved back into town. And that little wee train station wasn't the best, but we got it. That's gone. Of course, there's always change, but what about the Cook statue that got knocked down? What about the statue of the little bust of Queen Elizabeth in Beacon Hill Park? And what about now, indeed, the Centennial Fountain near, next to City Hall. So what are we gonna do about it? That's what I wanna know, that's why I came, right? I don't think anybody in this room wants to see that changed in any way. I want it left that way, other than get rid of that damn stucco. And I would appreciate hearing from Pam, thank you very much. You're 25 years on council, but Martin, indeed, your time on council. What will it take to have this stopped, okay? If we gotta wait till the next election, that's gonna be tough. I mean, we can't get an archaeological impact assessment process or something to delay it. That might be my one question right now. When is this slated to come down? Because I've been out of the loop on this a little bit until now. Thank you very much.
This is a good common point here. We will know that the Friends of Centennial Square are represented here, and we have one of their key people here. I'm also a member of the Friends of Centennial Square. I'm heavily vested in the fountain, having grown up with it, having watched it being built. Where we go with this is a real key point. I'd like Ken to introduce that topic. And know that we have some handouts and some further discussion. Our recording is almost at the end, so I'll turn it to Ken. But stay for the remainder.
Thank you very much. My name is Ken Johnson. Surprisingly enough, about 15 years ago, I was in Centennial Square with a city official, and I told him I would take the stucco off for $5,000 or $6,000, and they declined at the time. It's acrylic, and of course acrylic stucco can be removed just like you remove paint. I said I'd have to do some experiments, but they opted out of the opportunity. I was doing some other work around City Hall at the time. So it certainly can be done without jackhammers. They're not going to get that fountain moved without jackhammers. Larry, I don't know how you attach the canoe structure, but that fountain is embedded in concrete. It's not going to be easy. There are no drawings. I've asked twice, and there are no drawings. With Centennial Square, essentially, they want the fountain moved because it says it blocks the line of sight towards the theater stage that was put in back in the McPherson. And in the same concept, they say, let's fill that theater space in with a commercial site. They want to enclose it as part of phase 3 of their plan and turn it into a commercial site. So that kind of, it's kind of confusing. They don't seem to have knowledge of what they're doing one way or the other. They are planning to remove the fountain. It's tough to get them to admit it. But I have a video presentation that was done. You had to get invited to take part in it. And they say, council wants that fountain moved. Yet I can't find any place where in a council meeting they say so. So you put in ROIs and you wait around for 30 business days and hopefully get some information you can use. In the interim, people must write letters to council. It's a tough council to get to move, but they're not going to move the fountain right away. It's going to take them a long time to get around to doing it. But we have to just keep going at them. Leave the fountain alone. Leave the fountain alone. Thank you.
So lots of more comments, Frank. If you're really quick, we're almost at the end of the recording. Maybe you can come up here.
I can speak from here.
Yeah.
Just to clarify, does everyone know what's going on with the proposal call for Centennial Square? Okay, so I can tell you, my firm is on 2 teams of landscape architects and urban designers that are responding to a request for proposals by the City of Victoria made about a month and a half, 2 months ago, that went out through BC Bid, looking for an architect and landscape architect team to implement or to redesign Centennial Square. In that, some criteria and a program, which did include removing the water feature and the benches. I know that at least the 2 teams I'm on and I know of a third that is bidding on the project, disagree with moving or destroying that fountain in any way. In fact, so that is already out there. I was part of at least 2 over the last 5 years, design charrettes held by the city to come up with ideas for the square. And for me, and that in the guise of a budget for introducing accessibility mechanisms, ramps and so on, to make it more accessible. But in that, they were told repeatedly by me and by others who work in the field that the design of the square is not the problem with the square, and that those things have to do with its perimeter and a lot of other reasons. There's a worldwide expertise on what makes good public space. The shape and design of the fabric of the square is exemplary. It's actually very, very good. It's the fiddling with it over the years that have caused problems. Also, its perimeter. It's a dead zone. It's not treated as a place. It's treated as an in-between space. So that's what's wrong with it. And I know our hope is to then, if we're engaged by the city to do one thing, we are simply going to say, no, this is what you should do. Because they are commissioning a design, and not in the strictest of terms, the contract won't say you have to execute what is an amalgam of some of the things that came out during one of the charrettes. All those ideas have been piled in and said, here you go. And there is some expertise in City Hall, but I respectfully submit that the reason they're looking for outside consultants is because they're kind of going down a blind alley. So anyway, just so everybody knows, the city is working on getting somebody to fix the square, but it's, in my estimation, if it's just to execute their ideas, I don't think they're going to get anybody to do it with any seriousness. And then that's when the advocacy has to happen. That's, if it starts going down that path. If the teams that I know are retained, we'll steer them away from that.
So as you can see, we had a very lively discussion, and we were able to set it up with the contributions of our 3 knowledgeable panelists. J.C. Scott brought to the conversation an extensive background as a designer, a person who has been involved with the placement of public art, and as actually in his early career, was able to produce it in fairly mainstream and major public situations. Hilarion Gallant was our professional public artist, you might say, who's done major commissions throughout British Columbia, particularly here in Victoria and Vancouver. And you can't drive far in the Victoria landscape without seeing his work. And finally, Pam Madoff, who has had extensive experience as a politician, dealing with the public and the art, but also as a person who's responsible for the public policy issues that bring art to the fore in a public context.
I'll mention Rob Randall as well, who was actually the 4th panelist. And Rob is another example of a practicing artist and promoter of art, but he works in the art industry supporting artists. So he's long been an active citizen in Victoria, advocate of public art, critic, commentator, public art. So we really had an ideal mix of different points of view, I thought.
Yeah, I think we were very lucky. And it brought to the fore some of the issues in how audiences respond to public art, the politics around commissioning it, But also now, as we can see, the politics of conserving it. The great period of Victoria's public art, which began in the post-war, post-Second World War, 1950s and 60s. And the fact that many of these pieces need renovation, restoration work. I mean, walk around the city and look at some of our early murals. The Whale Wall, as it was called, for instance, on Wharf Street, is fading almost to nothing. And so those early murals need to either be recreated, refreshed, or replaced with something else. And bringing this to a head, of course, the major piece of early period 1960s public art, the Centennial Fountain, with its mosaics by Jack Kidder, need repair, restoration, but do they need actual removal? And this is the debate which is surfacing in a public context today. If you want to follow that or participate in the debate, I'd urge you to go to the website which a group of people have established to carry on this discussion. They call the Friends of Centennial Square.ca. If you go to their website, you will see the extent of the debate and some of the implications of adjusting or renovating the square with respect to what happens to the fountain and the issues that are arising around council's direction to the planners to come up with a scheme that may indeed see the fountain gone.
So in a larger context, this is a discussion right across our country. The conservation and the rediscovery of public art is one of the threads of civilization in a lot of ways, and our culture across Canada is now really awakening to this era of public art and public design, what we call the mid-century era. It's gotten a lot of attention, and there are campaigns underway right now to recognize and to consider the future of important public places, like Ontario Place on the waterfront in Toronto, the Ontario Science Museum. So it's a big topic, how you give the right kind of regard and how you bring ahead and forward the impact of public art of our grandparents' time. Now, the RAIC, our main focus is architecture, but we do see a great overlap with anything to do with public creativity, urban design, urban planning, landscape architecture, and public art. So it is kind of a common cause for everyone to take care, to attend to these things. And we're so grateful for such a fine panel, and for Martin Segers steering our way through the panel as well, and for the public that attended our meeting. I think their comments are also very, very insightful. So please enjoy this presentation. We will have follow-up presentations on other topics. The RAIC is kind of forging a bit of a partnership with the Wentworth Villa, and we're anticipating other topics will come into discussion over the years ahead. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Martin. The Friends of Centennial Square also were very active in kind of complementing our group. And I know that, as Martin said, they're campaigning uphill, and I think it's important that their efforts for such an outstanding piece of public art kind of get some attention. I think they have a petition underway as well, just to draw in more public involvement. So you might want to find a connection to that through Martin's, the link he's described. And thanks to Rogers Cable for recording and producing this show.